What's up, guys? Welcome to Knockers on the Bottom. I'm your host, Jay Mill, Jay Miller, if you like. So let's get into it. So today, I kind of want to take a look, since we're on the bye week and we're kind of finishing up here, a little bit of two kind of ways the Cowboys season could go, right? So uh, one of the ways that the season could go is they could continue on this particular path, being a little sorry, and kind of just having a lot of chaos on defense. The offense seems to be sputtering now. And then another path they could take is some of the moves that they made during the bye week, kind of helping them out, and the offense getting back on track. So let's take a look at scenario number one. So the Cowboys traded for Quentin Williams. They traded for Logan Wilson. They're getting DeMarvion Overshown back. They're getting Kalen Carson, played a little bit last week. He could play more this week. They're also going to be getting back Malik Hooker. They're also going to be getting back Savone Ravel. So just kind of looking at that, that is a lot of reinforcements, right? And, some of the natural part of you would say, hey, with all these reinforcements, maybe the Cowboys defense will be a little bit better, right? Maybe you stick Quinnen in the middle of that and you pair him up with either Kenny Clark or Osa Odigizua, and then you have your second wave going through. We also get Perry-on Winfrey back, so you got, maybe Perry-on Winfrey and Kenny Clark rotating in. Looks like Solomon Thomas is dealing with a calf injury, so he's going to be out for a little bit. But, you have a decent rotation, and then maybe your fifth guy is Jay Toia. Maybe you play a little bit of 5-man front, 4-man front, whatever have you. And then you have your linebackers coming in. Overshown has been practicing for a little bit here, but I would like to temper expectations there only because he's been out for a little while. Same thing with Savone Ravel. Last time Savone played any type of football, he was in college and he was at Eastern Carolina. So not only has he not played for a long time, but his next snap is going to be in the NFL against NFL players. So, Logan Wilson got benched by the Cincinnati Bengals. The Bengals were the only defense in the league worse than the Cowboys, and he couldn't even find snaps for them. And then Quentin Williams, Jets were, 1-7 with him playing there. So he was awesome. But if you want to argue, he wasn't doing anything to put that team over the top particularly. So the Cowboys are getting these additions, and sometimes the sum is greater than the parts. But if you want to take the side of, this going south for the Cowboys, you could look at everything that I laid out, right? Overshown might not be playing well until, realistically, maybe not till next year. Same thing with Ravel. Logan Wilson might be washed. Quinnen might be good, but Eberflus might not know how to use him properly. So you could go down these last stretch of games and still kind of get your butt kicked maybe to the last 3 or 4 games, and then all of a sudden now, some things start clicking a little bit, and you're looking a little bit better, but it's too late. It's too late. The season's not going to be saved. Cowboys are going to have a high draft pick. They do have 2 first-round picks coming up in this year's draft, and then from there, we just kind of see what happens. So I feel like, it's going to be interesting coming out of the bye week because there's so many new pieces. But I feel like the Cowboys realistically would want time for those pieces to gel. And I just don't know if they have time considering that they've dropped some of these games. Now, I'm not one of those people. I hear the people on the radio, my normal people that I listen to, all the people that I like, and they go, "Oh man, the Bears were a bad loss. The Bears are 6-3. Oh man, Carolina was a bad loss. Carolina's 5-5. Both of those teams are better than you. I'm sorry to say it, but if we're saying you are what your record says you are, the Bears and the Panthers are both better than you. You being the Cowboys, right? So I don't view those as, honestly, I don't view those as bad losses. The Eagles on that opening night with that weird storm situation. I mean, they beat you barely. They're 7-2. You know what I mean? Your wins this season have come against the Jets, 2-7, the Giants, I believe, also 2-7, um, and the Washington Commanders, who maybe not that much better, maybe they're like 3-6, but somewhere around there. So your wins have come against very bad teams. You tied the Packers, who are reeling, right? They're 5-3-1. Their offense doesn't look as great as everybody suspected going into the season. So if you're taking this side of the coin as a Cowboys fan, you haven't really beat any good teams. You tied what might be one good team, and you hung in there against another, two good teams. And then other than that, the Broncos kicked your ass. The Arizona Cardinals kicked your ass. The Panthers barely beat you on a last-second field goal, but the Bears kicked your ass. The Eagles, you stopped them, but they also stopped you. So, and they didn't even have Jalen Carter for that game because he hocked to a deck, before the game even got started. So, just kind of looking at it, that's that side of things. Now, looking at the other side of things, I can see a world where you've got the, let's say at worst, the third best defensive tackle in the league that you just traded for, in Quinnen. And you also did get Logan Wilson, who, for all his shortcomings athletically, cerebrally, he is actually a pretty decent player. And you put a person like Quinnen Williams in front of him, you put a person like Kenny Clark in front of him, you put a person like Osa in front of him, and it gives him some freedom to diagnose and move around. Also, Logan Wilson has been around a zone cover 2 system for quite some time, right? Mike Zimmer coached over there in Cincinnati, and Cincinnati runs a very similar scheme to what the Cowboys are running this year. So as far as the learning curve for Logan Wilson, it's not going to be that difficult as far as the transition. And then you put him in front of some nice defensive tackles, because the strength of the Dallas Cowboys defense is those middle two. And now not only is he able to diagnose, but he's able to read and react and do so cleanly. But the other part is he's been in a system similar to this. So I also think some of those communication errors between your linebackers and your defensive line are kind of going to go away. And, that will allow the front seven to play a little bit more freely. So now you take into account that. You also take into account Overshone, who, even though he hasn't played a lot of football, what we have seen of him when he has played, he's been dynamic. He's been impactful. He is a smart player. He is a read and react player. And he's really good going forward. And oh, by the way, he also had 5 sacks last year in a limited amount of games. So he's also going to help your pass rush if Eberflus unleashes him in that way. Now, Savon Revel, yes, he hasn't played against NFL competition, but his advantages are length, size, and speed, right? A lot of things that are great at the cornerback position, and also a lot of things that, kind of are different from some of the other guys we have. Like, for example, with Trayvon Diggs, you have length and size, but because he's been coming off the knee injury, you don't have that much speed. With Deron Blaine, you have some of those similar traits, but the Cowboys are kind of deploying him in a way as, hey, man, we're going to have you follow around our number one guy and see what you do. And he's probably still going to be in that role for a few more weeks. He's had some tough matchups. But I think also with Deron Bland, he's kind of been, slow playing, coming off the injury a little bit, and kind of just coming along there. So you have Savon Revel also coming off an injury. But Savon actually in college played a mix match type of scheme, which is sort of kind of what the Cowboys are playing now, which is everything is zone until it's not, right? So On the snap of the ball, the guy's running through your zone, but he leaves your zone. You pass him off to the next guy. The other guy comes into your zone. That's your guy. And initially, it's all zone. So if the quarterback lets go of the ball quickly, he's seeing zone. You can sit back and you can make a break. But let's say he doesn't let it go quickly. Once that guy comes into your area and no other guys are coming into that area, it becomes man. So once that guy is, you pass off one guy, that same guy passes off another guy. When those two guys split into those two different zones, you're running with them. And now you're going man. Now, at that point, you're at a little bit of a disadvantage, which is what the problem I have with Matt Eberflus's scheme. Because if you're doing mix match, right? So you're letting a guy run free and make his zone, and then once they go into a certain area, it becomes man. The problem with that is off the line of scrimmage, he's not coaching his guys to get hands on the guys to reroute the guys. And that's probably because he doesn't want to reroute the guys, because what his scheme calls for is to let the guys release and go into whatever area they decided to go in, and then let the cornerbacks mirror in coverage. And that works very well when you have zone corners who are awesome at mirroring and coverage. But the thing about the Cowboys is they invested heavily into some other schemes that they had in years previous. And so what you're usually doing is you're allowing your cornerbacks to get hands on the guy in the line of scrimmage, reroute him, and then turn and run with him, trying to stay in his hip pocket, cut routes off, safety help over the top. You're basically playing like a two deep shell with man underneath. That's kind of what the Cowboys are built to do. They're built to press and run at the line of scrimmage with two safeties over the top helping, or with Malik Hooker playing a single high safety and Donovan Wilson kind of buzzing underneath and cleaning everything else up that comes in that short to intermediate range, right? That's what the defense is built for. But Eberflus has been playing his guys, more either, cover two traditional, which is you're not doing a cover two shell with man underneath. You're more so doing a traditional cover two. So to break it down simply, it's not exactly this way, but a lot of you guys that play Madden, and when you're picking your defense, you see the cover two, and you kind of see the two yellow spots at the top where the safeties are dropping, and then you see the two spots underneath where the linebackers are kind of covering that short to intermediate range, and then you have your corners covering the flat. Now, the difference with Madden and real life is that sometimes those responsibilities change, right? So a lot of times you'll have one safety maybe going deep, and then one of the corners going deep, but then maybe that other safety coming down and covering the flat, and maybe some of the linebackers kind of buzzing in different places. Those are all the different ways the NFL does it. Video games, they try to oversimplify. They're there for entertainment, but I'm saying that to say, if Chavon Ravel is a good fit for Matt Eberflus's scheme, and then all of a sudden you also have someone like Kalen Carson who's a good fit for the scheme, and Logan Wilson who's a good fit for the scheme, and Quinnen Williams is lining up, head up over the center, shading outside shoulder of the center, kind of splitting the double team between him and the guard. Now you're kind of playing the run a little bit more aggressively, but you're also giving a little bit of pass rush, because even though Quinnen's kind of playing the one, he's still able to, split double teams. He beats double teams at a high rate and still gets pressure at a high rate, and converting some of those things to incompletions or into run stuffs. And honestly, I think also one of the biggest keys to the Cowboys having some success in the second half of the season is getting off the field on third down. I'm hoping with the addition of Quinnen Williams and him being an actual player that you have to game plan for, maybe that frees things up for Donovan Ezeraku, who's been coming along the last few weeks. Maybe that frees things up for Jadeveon Clowney, who's also been coming on the last couple of weeks. Now, personally, I am one of those people. I'm of the mind that I would love to see the Cowboys play a lot more five-man front. If you go back to when Micah Parsons was still on a team before the season even started, I was already calling for the Cowboys to play a five-man front. I thought they should be playing that from the beginning, because on passing downs, not every down, But on passing downs, it's going to give every single person a one-on-one, and maybe with a tight end chip or a running back staying in for protection, maybe Micah faces a double team or a triple team. Micah's not here anymore. But now that Quinnen is here, you can still do some of those 5-man fronts on third down specifically, third down passing downs, and allow everybody to have a one-on-one and force them to double team somebody. Because what I really want, right, is I want a running back stepping up in the middle of that pocket to kind of try to clean up Quinnen when he comes through. And I want everybody else to have a one-on-one, and I want like a tight end trying to block Jadeveon. I want a tight end trying to block Donovan Ezaraku, and seeing what happens there, because I do believe pressure in the middle of the pocket will start to force some of the quarterbacks to try to go to the outside. And I think on the outside, we actually have some things that make sense in the scheme to make that difficult on these quarterbacks to maybe even get outside and try to get to the secondary portion of the play. So if the Cowboys can do that, I can see them having a better second half of the season. On offense, they just have to continue to do what they're doing, right? Because I do think a lot of the problems in the last couple of games on offense have come because the defense has been getting their asses handed to them. And so the offense has to basically get out of character and try to do things to quickly catch up in the game or to score quickly to kind of keep their defense, in the game. I do think if the defense can get more stops on third down, because they've actually been, by the metrics, decent on first and second down, that it will, marry hand in hand with the offense being able to kind of stay in their traditional game plan of wanting to run the ball, set up play action. One of the other keys to success here in the second half of the season is the special teams, right? We haven't seen Cavante get, loose for anything crazy. And that's kind of the only thing I have a worry about, because honestly, Brandon Arby's been great. And the punter has been great. And Cavante hasn't been bad. I don't want to make it seem like Cavante's been terrible, but I do want to see more of those explosive returns. So Cavante, one of the things I've noticed is late in the game when the Cowboys are down and they need to go on a scoring drive or they need something late, Cavante delivers, right? He gets a lot of those 35, 40-yard returns, deep in the fourth quarter when the Cowboys are on their last possession or their last two possessions, and they just gotta have it, right? But it's just like with the defense. Instead of forcing punts at the end of the game when the Cowboys are down by 10, 20, 15, awesome. You force some punts when the game is out of hand, and maybe the Cowboys battle back to make the score look okay. I'd rather see them force some of those punts early in the game to give those offense time to get into the game flow and maybe get you a lead. Same thing with the special teams. I want to see Cavante getting some of those returns earlier in the game. Get that return in the second quarter. Get that return in the first quarter, in the third quarter. Not when your game and the back is on the line. Play with that same urgency early in the game, and I think it'll bode well for the Cowboys. But that's all I got for you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Hit me up on Twitter at jmillerIYL. You can also hit me up at knockersonthebottom at outlook.com or knockersonthebottom at gmail.com. Leave comments, questions below. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Love you guys. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Until next time, I'm your host, J Mill if you like. This has been Knockers on the Bottom. Peace.